Colin, welcome to this little forum. You're the chief trainer with TABMA Training for the frame and truss qualifications. Colin, tell me a little bit about what frames and trusses actually are.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I suppose we can talk about them in two different categories. Timber wall frames are basically the structural components that support the roof of a house. And all of these components are manufactured specifically for each project. So each project is different in its specification. What they do is they contain all of the window and door openings to allow the installation of each of these, and is what the wall lining or plasterboard is fixed to. Essentially, they form the profile or layout of the house, for example, the room sizes, and all of the components are pre-cut to size and then assembled on a framing line. So that's a bit of a summary on wall frames. Roof trusses, they're an engineered component to support the roof materials such as the tiles or the colour-bond roofing and the ceiling lining. In most cases, that's plasterboard. They form the profile or shape of the roof with all of its various angles, such as hips and valleys. And timber roof trusses are manufactured with components cut to exacting lengths and angles and then set up in a jig to the designed profile.
Colin, in a sense, it's a very exact sort of structural manufacturing process, making the
there's a set of Australian standards that manufacturing needs to comply to with tolerances as far as positioning and cutting and allowable gaps and things like that in all those assembled components, and also the way they nail these components together. So being familiar with those standards is imperative as part of the job role.
The trainees, they complete a Certificate 3 in timber frame and truss manufacturing. As they're doing that course, what can they expect to do on the job?
Okay, so what they do on the job, as you would appreciate, every project that or that they manufacture is unique in itself. Mm-hmm. So it's always different. So each task, therefore, requires the relevant skills to assemble and manufacture to those Australian standards, and also the customer specification, because they can be quite different. So the process is that they will cut all of those components to an exacting length in sizes, grades and timber. They'll assemble those plates and studs in a framing machine. They'll then assemble all of the window and door components at the end of the framing line, and then they'll stack those frames, ready for transport. Similar process for roof trusses, except all the components are more about cutting angles because of the shape of a roof truss. And they set the truss up into a jig to the profile, and then they place all those components in a jig and apply those various metal connector plates, which are then pressed into the timber and stacked ready for transport.
What does the course actually teach the trainee, Colin?
So importantly, workplace health and safety, how to work safely in this environment, because in a frame and truss plant, there are all sorts of, there's different types of saws that you're using. There are those truss presses, which are hydraulic, so they're pressing large amounts of tonnage onto these connector plates, and nail guns and so on and so forth. So workplace health and safety first and foremost. Communication and teamwork, both important, to complete the jobs on time and to the required quality standards.
Yeah.
The other things we teach are how to use those saws, how to cut, use them to cut lengths and angles, how to set up a truss press, and how to use that truss press, how to assemble those components in a framing machine, how to use those handheld tools such as nail guns, staple guns and drills, to use them safely, but also to make sure they're well maintained. And finally, to have knowledge of timber. How is timber grown? How is it manufactured, graded, and the various characteristics that impact on the quality and also teach them the skill to identify the various faults in timber that can affect the manufactured product.
Colin, for a frame and truss manufacturing plant to have people working on the manufacturing line who hold a formal qualification like this, how advantageous is that for the plant?
It's a huge advantage because, as I just said earlier, we're teaching them all of the skills that are required in all the various areas within the actual manufacturing facility. And having those skills creates diversity. And to have someone with skills with diversity makes them a valued employee for the business because, as you know, people are away sick, people are on annual leave, or there may be a greater demand in a certain area. And if you've got the diversity and multi-skilled in all those different sections, then that's of true value.
And where can this qualification lead to for the trainee once they're qualified? What could their career path be, Colin?
Well, there could be multiple career paths. So all factories, they need a supervisor or a leading hand. And generally, they're the people with the most experience or a qualification. And they're there to coordinate jobs and people and make sure things run the way they should do. Potentially, you could also progress into a Cert 4 leadership and management and progress into a position such as an operations manager. So depending on the size of the business, operations managers are coordinating a whole lot of things at a much larger scale than more so a small factory, for example. Or it could also be a good grounding to progress into a timber systems design qualification. This is how I progressed on a factory floor up into timber systems design. You've got a really good understanding of production and its requirements and what makes it work, which helps you become a better timber systems designer. Mm-hmm. Or alternatively, also a good grounding process if you want to progress into a trade qualification such as carpentry.